Jimmie Smith on your right and Rudy Briksza on your left. They were both the higher seeds in their matchup, and in this one, Rudy, the number 2 seed over the number 3 seed, is going to have the choice of play or draw.
Which is absolutely crucial, I would say, for the exact reasons I was just talking about. Rudy's going to have to seize initiative in the early game if he's going to want to come out on top. If the game goes really long and both players have substantial resources, then Jimmie Smith's the individual power level of his cards is going to take over. It's going to be really hard for Rudy to win without, say, a Miracle Bonfire. But if he can seize initiative early, force Jimmie into some bad trades, maybe even just get his life total low enough that Rudy can sort of alpha through the bigger creatures, then that's going to be his main path to victory. So being on the play is going to be pretty important for him, and it looks like Jimmie Smith is also going down to 6 cards, which Rudy's got to be a little relieved about.
All right, Jimmie picks up his cards. He sets his deck. It looks like he's going to keep here, and Rudy starts off with a Temple Garden tapped.
We are underway here in the semifinals.
Jimmie Smith likes his Temple Garden untapped. Probably going to start off with some kind of mana elf.
Yeah, he does have 4 Absent Pilgrim and 1 Arbor Elf. And there we go, Absence Pilgrim. Kind of taking the play back from Rudy using a mana accelerant there.
Stomping Ground into Voice of Resurgence. Not the greatest in this kind of matchup. It's only going to trigger when it dies. And
Yeah.
you're most likely going to be trading a lot of creatures back and forth, so that elemental token's never going to get gigantic.
Yeah, it's definitely not the body you want, but it's a fine placeholder in your curve. Just get something on board so that you can continue to develop your position and start attacking Jimmie Smith.
Jimmie started with the Absence Pilgrim, but does not have a play on turn 2 for 3 mana or 2. And now he gets attacked by Rudy's Voice of Resurgence and Hasted Flinthoof Boar.
He flooped the pig and got in there for 3 more. Jimmie Smith definitely on the defensive, missing a land drop too. This is exactly how Rudy would have scripted it up. Wow, and Dahmer Raid gonna play a Stone Rain here, taking out the Absence Pilgrim.
Fight!
This is exactly how Rudy drew it up, taking initiative early and putting Jimmie on the back foot and then punishing his stumble. And he did punish the stumble quite hard there and takes a very quick game 1, under 2 minutes.
The pig and the elk take it down. Voice of Resurgence.
My mom used to read that to me every night before bed. The pig and the elk.
All right, so that was a quick game 1. Rudy in the Naya Mirror takes it down.
that was a swift
So
game.
we've got to quickly switch gears and get to that trivia that we promised. 6 months of premium at StarCityGames.com on the line. I've got a question here for everyone out there. If you know the answer, please tweet us at the hashtag SCGPremium. Remember that it's not a race. We will choose a winner randomly from all the correct answers, so you don't need to hurry.
It's about accuracy, not speed.
That's correct. So my question is, here we are in the last week of this Innistrad Standard. Leading up to this event, in the last few weeks, people have been saying that there is one absolutely dominant archetype you have to play. This is the best deck in the format. Todd Anderson wrote an article about it. You were going to write essentially the same article at the same time.
He beat me to it.
You saw his and said, well, I guess I have to find a new topic.
Yep.
This archetype is named after one of the shards in Shards of Alara, and it did not show up in our top 8 this weekend.
Completely
in Atlanta.
absent.
So
Completely absent. I think this is the 3rd week in a row.
it could be
I
at
know
least 2.
I know there was none in Philly. There might have been one in Cincinnati or whatever was the week before, but it's fallen off and hard.
So what is the archetype that people have been claiming is the best deck in Standard right now, just before the rotation, named after a shard from Shards of Alara that did not show up in the top 8 this weekend here in Atlanta?
It's a good question.
Hashtag SCG Premium. Once again, we will choose a winner randomly from all the correct answers for 6 months of StarCityGames.com Premium. All right, let's go back to the answer is not Naya. There are 2 Naya decks here still fighting right in front of us. And let's take a look at their sideboards and see what they're going to do in game number 2.
Well, I think that Rudy's still going to have to maintain initiative. I don't think that 15 cards, even if they were all coming in, are going to be enough to take over the sort of late game advantage that Jimmie Smith has. I think that that individually means that Zealous Conscripts is probably coming in. I think that that's a good curve topper, a good way to get out from under a semi-stabilized position, say a defensive Thundermaw Hellkite or a Loxodon Smiter or a Hardcast Gorkland Rampager trying to block. If you ever steal an Aurelia the War Leader, whoo, daddy, that's a lot of damage. So I think that those are coming in. Not sure on Hellrider. That might be a card that is good in theory, but the 3/3 body actually just gets caught up. Like so many of Rudy's creatures just get bogged down in a game state where like they can't really profitably attack, which makes Hellrider a lot worse. So that might not come in. The third Bonfire of the Damned also is like a little iffy. It takes out the mana creatures, and if you miracle it in a late game, that's one way to get out from under a semi-stabilized position. But at the same time, it doesn't actually answer like a board of, say, Voice of Resurgence, Boros Reckoner. You know, you don't want to bonfire that board. So I'm not sure if the third copy is going to come in there. Boros Charms, Ray of Revelations probably not coming in. Oblivion Ring definitely coming in. Just a spot removal spell so we can keep attacking. Rest in peace, not for this matchup. Garruk Relentless, maybe. Garruk Relentless is really good at sniping mana creatures because it immediately flips at 2, so then you can use it to tutor. But I'm not sure that this is the matchup where you want to be doing that. Garruk Relentless is theoretically good in this matchup, but this is the type of matchup where you need to be the beatdown, and Garruk is more of a mid-rangey control card. Like, it's an attrition card, right? Like, you're trying to 2-for-1 a mana creature and then get value out of it. I'm not sure that's Rudy's path to victory, but maybe one Garruk is just good enough that you're going to play it anyway. And then Unflinching Courage, decent at racing, a little scary if you're going to get, Mizium Mortars or Oblivion Ring or something like that, but very likely coming in, I would assume.
And Jimmie Smith has a couple of interesting singletons in his sideboard. You saw the Rurik Thar, the Unbowed.
An Ogre Warrior.
An Ogre Warrior with Reach, strangely enough. Aurelia's Fury, AJ. This card, when it was first spoiled, a lot of people thought it was going to be the money card in the set, and it turned out not to be. And here it is. This is the only copy I've seen in recent memory, in fact.
Yeah, I besides a couple random one-ofs, I don't think it's seen any true play, but it's undoubtedly a powerful effect. It's just a matter of whether you can capitalize on it and whether you'll have the resources to utilize it to its maximum potential. It does a lot of things.
Too many things, perhaps?
It's got a lot of words on it, I'll tell you that much.
That's the thing about cards like this. When they seem to have so much value, they do so many different things. Maybe they've been costed too expensive to actually see play, and you just want a more streamlined version that does less things but costs less.
Yeah, it does one thing well rather than a bunch of things decently. And then Selesnya Charms and his own Unflinching Courages, also options to come in, and 2 Blasphemous Act, which really defines Jimmie Smith's position as the control in this matchup.
We'll see if he's brought those in. That seems better against a token-heavy strategy where there will be more creatures. This matchup, there are creatures, but not in an overwhelming amount.
Yeah, it's more super strong individual creatures.
So we start off, Jimmie Smith doesn't have anything on the first 2 turns, but has a Boros Reckoner on 3, and Rudy matches with a Voice of Resurgence and a Scavenging Ooze now. Scavenging Ooze is a card, a kind of classic mid-range card that can really take over the game if these players start to trade creatures. Jimmie Smith.
Get a Mortars that out of the way right now. That Scavenging Ooze is one of those cards that can really help you in a bogged down board state. It looks like Jimmie Smith is not only missing his 4th land drop, but missing a color. Mana issues all match for Jimmie Smith. But
the same on the other side, no red for Rudy, so they're both missing a color here. Rudy starts off with 3 Temple Gardens and a Sun Petal Grove, but they're both able to play Boros Reckoner. The hybrid red-white spell. Jimmie plays it for all red, Rudy plays it for all white.
mirrored images.
And here we go, facing off against each other. It's hard to attack a Reckoner into another Reckoner. Even if you first strike it.
I was going to say, this is a Gorkline Rampager like 90% of the time, and sure enough, there it is. Wow, and a Boros Charm for double strike.
So that's +4. It's a 7/7 double strike, 14 -3 toughness.
+3 for the Boros Reckoner trigger. So it's actually just 14 straight up. That's pretty insane.
And Rudy looks at his hand, but he's tapped out. There's really nothing he can do here about this.
You got to save your Force of Wills for a couple hours before you can cast those, Rudy.
You talked a lot about Jimmie Smith having to take the control route.
Yeah, I look pretty foolish now.
That Boros Charm out of nowhere with a double strike.
That's a really powerful sequence.
And all Rudy can do is attack back with his Voice of Resurgence.
Is Rudy at 6? Did Jimmie Smith miss his... Well, looks like Boros Charm is going to finish it off anyway. And there we go. Just as quickly, we are on to Game 3.
Yeah, if that life total update we got was correct, it's very possible that the Boros Reckoner trigger was missed on one side.
But it didn't matter. A second Boros Charm, that... When you're the aggressor, Boros Charm is one of the best cards that you could have in the history of Magic, because it can protect you from being swept, it can hit really, really hard, or it can just go to the dome as reach. Like, all 3 modes are perfectly tuned for an aggressive stance. Really, really an awesomely designed card, I think. I like the charms.
Yeah, I like all the charms too. Boros Charm seems to be one of the best in constructed. And we also see Azorius Charm see a lot of play in the blue-white flash type decks.
Golgari Charm seeing a bunch of sideboard play. A lot of charms running around. Celestial Charms everywhere. I will say I don't like the design of Azorius Charm as much.
Why is that?
I think draw a card is a bad mode for a charm.
Because it's just cycling.
Yeah, it's like the reason that charms are good is because you have a bunch of options with them so that they're like rarely ever dead. But cycling it is like admitting that it's dead and just getting a fresh card. I think that not only is that kind of a bad mode for a charm because it's like, yeah, you have all these options and you're just going to cycle it. But also it's like, it's such a free roll for those decks to just play this card because not only is it almost always going to be good, but even if it's not, you can just cash it in. I don't know, it seems like kind of lazy design, you know? Like, if you just put cycling on any card
on
that...
everything,
yeah. I don't know, almost every mode for every charm is super exciting and like has a big effect on the game, except for that, is just like cycle. Doesn't affect the board and just... You don't even know that it was a charm, it could have been anything, you know?
Could have been a Jungle Weaver.
Exactly.
You keep calling it cycling. We had an interesting story from coverage content manager Glenn Jones, who you see sitting there next to Jimmie Smith. He was watching Rudy's quarterfinal match yesterday. Said that Rudy missed a Voice of Resurgence trigger when his opponent cast a spell on his turn, but what he did was he said, cycle Azorius Charm. So by saying cycle, he may have kind of tricked Rudy into forgetting about
tricked his brain into thinking it wasn't a spell.
But you do have to cast it. You can counter it. I've seen that mode countered before when people are digging for an answer.
Yes. It does happen. But that goes to show how innocuous that ability is. If Rudy didn't even consider it. Yeah, Rudy didn't even consider it a spell for his Voice of Resurgence.
Here we go. Rudy shocks himself with a stomping ground to start off with an Avacyn's Pilgrim. Jimmie Smith elects not to shock.
Rudy not only on the play, but with the mana boost
And a Loxodon Smiter.
Angry Elephant with a hammer.
4/4. Cannot be countered, but it can be mortared.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the ways that Jimmie Smith's going to take back initiative, but Rudy's not going to let him.
Turn 3 Hellrider
Going
here.
straight to Hellrider. Rudy's draw is exactly what he needs. Go beat down. Looks like his hand is 2 more lands and a Thundermaw, which is presumably coming down next turn. Really putting Jimmie Smith on the back foot, which is exactly what he needs to do, especially from the play.
This is a situation where Jimmie Smith, we saw him win game 2 on the backs of double Boros Charms, but if he has any Boros Charms right now, they're not that good.
Yeah, they're
So
essentially dead.
Is that a card that you side out when you're on the draw in this matchup?
Possibly. It's definitely a lot worse on the draw. You could like shave down to 2 or maybe even 1. I think the effect is powerful enough that you want access to it in your deck. But yeah, that is definitely something to consider. Sideboarding differently, being on the play versus the draw.
So Rudy Briksza has added that Thundermaw Hellkite you mentioned. So his curve went Avacyn's Pilgrim, Loxodon Smiter, a 4/4, Hellrider, kind of a pseudo 4/4, and then Thundermaw Hellkite, the 5/5 flyer. So
That's a nice curve from the play with the mana boost.
We could see 3 very quick games here. This will be over momentarily, but Jimmie Smith has a Boros Reckoner. That's not a bad card to have
Pretty
on
defensive.
the defense.
Yeah, pretty good defensive card.
It did make Rudy hold that Hellrider at bay.
It's this is a time game. Like Jimmie Smith just didn't have enough time. If you look at his hand, I think he's got an Unflinching Courage and a Sigarda Host of Herons and a couple other sweet cards, but he just hasn't had the time to deploy all of his threats and is just being run down by Rudy's much more aggressive draw.
There's that Unflinching Courage you mentioned, so he's going to attack for 5, gain 5 life, but that only gains him back the life that the Thundermaw took. If Rudy has another hasted attacker here...
This is 12 damage right now coming from Rudy. So if he has anything, then Jimmie Smith is dead. Looks like he's just got a couple lands, but...
He's going to count up the damage, 3 triggers, so 6 essentially from the Hellrider, 7...
Yeah, Rudy's hand
5 from the Thundermaw.
Rudy's hand
12.
Yeah, Rudy's hand looks like 2 lands and a Pilgrim, and sure enough, he is 1 point short. But you can put Jimmie Smith to 1 and threaten to kill him with the Hellrider triggers so that the Boros Reckoner has to attack the next turn and then try and threaten lethal after that. But you're pretty dead to a Boros Charm there. You're dead to multiple blockers. You're dead to, say, a Mortars on the Hellrider. Definitely not the best position for Rudy, but you can't profitably block the Boros Reckoner anyway, so I feel like you have to just put Jimmie Smith to 1 and cross your fingers.
This is very interesting to be able to put your opponent to 1, but feel like you might be dead.
Yeah.
And there you go, Rudy attacks only... He's thinking about attacking only with the Thundermaw Hellkite.
I'm not sure what that accomplishes. Like I said, you don't really have any profitable blocks on the Boros Reckoner. Pretty much no matter what, because it can just gain first strike if you try and double it and take down, say the Thundermaw, and then the Hellrider doesn't kill it, and you get the Boros Reckoner trigger in addition to the trample damage, and the life gain still happens. It doesn't seem like that's a winning exchange in any variation. I'm almost positive Rudy's going to come to the conclusion to attack with everything and cross his fingers. It seems like that's his only way to win. Looks like he does want to leave the Hellrider home.
Okay, so attacks for 6.
7, 8, the 2 Hellrider triggers. Knocks him to 5, but he's going back up to 10 here, at the very least. If he has, a pump spell, another Unflinching Courage.
Another Boros Charm
Boros
here?
Charm, something like that.
And of course, the Boros Reckoner must attack here to gain some life. Rudy tries to chump block with an Avacyn's Pilgrim. Well, not quite sure what he's doing. Could be double blocking. With the Unflinching Courage, Armadillo Cloak does grant trample in addition to the lifelink.
Yes, it does, and I'm not sure what this block accomplishes. You're still taking the same amount of damage, theoretically, because the Boros Reckoner just redirects the Avacyn's Pilgrim damage to your head if he wants. You're actually giving him the option to kill your other Avacyn's Pilgrim, which doesn't seem that good. Is SCGATL double white or double green?
Let's double check on that.
I thought it was double white, but he just cast it off of one white source.
SCGATL, Host of Herons.
I might be wrong. I've been wrong before.
It's double white, so let's see if we can get a stop on that action there.
That should not be in play. That is an uncastable spell.
Because it is
I feel we may have passed the point of no return.
4 Stomping Grounds and only the Sacred Foundry. Stomping Grounds / Rootbound Crag.
And send. The Wolf Run does represent lethal here.
We are trying to get word to our spotter, and then you see the hand come in. Say, hold on, guys.
Yeah, awkward. He even has a Sacred Foundry in his hand. He just played the wrong land on 5. I think it's too late to rewind now. Because Jimmie Smith could have done something else with that 5 mana if you're going to rewind on his turn, but Rudy's already taken a full turn.
Let's see what happens here.
Sometimes we can do extra cool stuff because we're on camera, so we have, you know, full information, but it's still... Like, Jimmie Smith has perfect information that Rudy doesn't have another place, and that can change what he wants to do on his turn with the 5 mana that he tried to use to cast the SCGATL.
So the life totals are currently correct. Right, the SCGATL was cast after the Boros Reckoner attacked, gained Jimmie 5 life.
Yeah. I'm not sure what happened with the trigger. I don't remember what Rudy was at, but the trigger could have either hit the Pilgrim or gone to the Dome, or maybe Jimmie Smith missed it again. That's also possible. But theoretically, blocking Boros Reckoner with, you know, a 3/3 is not profitable. You're actually just breaking even on damage. Looks like they are ruling it's too late.
Well, actually, you're giving him more lifelink. Because the Boros Reckoner
Yeah,
will
the
do
redirect.
damage,
Yeah, the
and then-
redirect actually gains
and then
him
the trigger
extra
will
life.
gain him some more life.
So you're actively losing value by blocking a Boros Reckoner with an unflinching courage. Because the trample damage is coming through anyway. You're not going to block it profitably because it's huge and can gain first strike. And the redirect gives him not only more options, but more lifelink. Now, if the SCGATL stands as played, the Wolf Run does represent lethal, almost unstoppable lethal. You know, Rudy's one card has to be exactly Selesnya Charm, I'm pretty sure.
So
Looks like they're going to try and rewind it.
Okay, so we've come back to the point.
He needs to put that Rootbound Crag back in his hand. There we go.
Now, have we?
Rootbound Crag needs to go back in his hand, and then we're in Jimmie Smith's main phase 2, where he's already played a land. Or, I'm sorry, the Wolf Run needs to go back in his hand, right? The Wolf Run was the land he played this turn. Or in his extra turn, I mean.
But he's still holding on to the SCGATL here in his hand for some reason. Yeah, I agree with you. I don't think I would have rewound this situation just because
Too much has happened.
now we're not even sure which lands have been played at this point.
Why is the SCGATL back in play?
I'm not quite sure what's going on.
He put the Rootbound Crag back. Technically, it should be the Wolf Run, but it doesn't matter because we're in Jimmie Smith's main phase 2, so he's not going to be able to activate it anyway. Now, the SCGATL needs to go back in your hand because you are unable to cast it. The Boros Reckoner is tapped.
And you mentioned earlier about this being a camera match. DCI policy actually says unless you're doing an investigation for cheating, you're not really supposed to use information from the camera to assist in rulings.
Yeah, and they haven't used us.
No, they have not.
They made this ruling independent of us, but he's trying to play a Sun Petal Grove now and cast Sigarda, but he's already played his land this turn. It was actually that Rootbound Crag, and then he played the Kessig Wolf on the turn after, but...
And this is why I say I wouldn't rewind, because just watching it naturally, I don't specifically remember what lands are played. If you do a rewind, you need to rewind all of the actions.
I remember, but that's because I'm paying a lot, like very, very close attention to that thing.
You are the one who first caught the haze. Do we have a Sigarda double white? It's hard to tell here because the lands are on top of each other and you can't see what they all are or what colors they make from this angle.
Yeah, it looks like they're now deciding whether or not Jimmie Smith has made his land drop, and he did.
And we see a handshake there. Jimmie offered the handshake, so...
I think Rudy might have just scooped because he's dead anyway. Yeah, the look on his face says he lost. Rudy, gracious in defeat, though. An awkward finish there, but Jimmie Smith does indeed take it down. Oh, what? Rudy won?
So we're
going to try and figure out what's going on here. The judge is saying that Rudy is victorious. Inexplicably.
Well, if he was unable to cast that Sigarda, did Rudy have the board position where he could attack for the victory?